I'm going to go with Christian McCaffrey, even though Alvin Kamara to date actually has more touchdowns. I just believe in Christian McCaffrey. When he gets healthy, this guy's going to be an absolute Hall of Fame caliber beast.
Okay, Canty, who starts first, Justin Fields or Trey Lance?
I'm going to go with Trey Lance, and let me preface this by saying I think both young signal callers will start more games than the incumbent. But in terms of Justin Fields, I feel like there's a steeper learning curve in terms of what he did in college and what they're going to ask him to do with Chicago Bears under Matt Nagy's offense. With Trey Lance, he was one of the most pro-ready quarterbacks coming in, and after the 49ers drafted him, they praised his football IQ. I think we see him on the field a lot sooner than we see Justin Fields.
Okay, and by the way, speaking of Trey Lance, 49ers tight end George Kittle had this to say about his early impressions of Trey Lance.
I think Trey's, he has all the attributes to be a very good, very special quarterback. He takes risks. He's trying to fit into those small windows. I'm excited to see, just his progress, throughout training camp. And I know that when you're in a room with Coach Shanahan, the mastermind, he's going to learn a lot. So I think he's definitely in the right spot.
Yeah, that mastermind he just referred to, Kyle Shanahan, recently told The Athletic, I definitely see it as Jimmy's the starter, but if Trey is ready to compete, I have no problem with it. I don't sit there and say, hey, we're not playing a rookie quarterback. We have to rest him first year. If he comes in and he's playing at a high level and we think he gives us the best chance to win, we wouldn't hesitate to do that. Telling comments right there. Let's bring our guys back in. Jeff, what are you hearing out of San Francisco regarding their quarterback battle?
Finally, some honesty. That's all we need to hear. like a head coach just say, I'll play him if he's good. Like literally, and I'm sure we'll talk about this eventually. Trevor Lawrence, they're saying he might not start right away. They're not naming the starter. Kyle Shanahan is exactly right. He doesn't need to say anything else. And the one thing that he added to that's a layer that is also very honest and candid, is the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo is a really good player. And it's going to be more difficult for Trey Lance to step into that role because Jimmy is such a good player. So all honest answers there, and we'll see when it comes to training camp. Kyle Shanahan saying it's tough to have an opinion when you don't have a body of work. Amen to that. Love everything he said there, and I think every coach should follow suit.
And I just say ditto to that. Can I just say this about Shanahan? I think in the beginning he had that whole thing with the end of the world and people made fun of him. But for the most part, he's really tried to be honest with both of his quarterbacks. And you see that honesty being reciprocated as Jimmy G and Trey Lance seem okay with the situation. But Canty's laughing. Why, you disagree?
No, I'm saying he's giving us honesty after the draft. Before the draft, he's telling us that it's going to be Mac Jones.
Right,
so I'm just looking at that little bit of irony.
It's called trickeration.
Yeah, a little bit of trickeration. But listen, they traded all of that draft capital to move up to get Trey Lance because they think Trey Lance gives them a better option at the quarterback position in terms of getting this team where they want to go. With all respect to what Jimmy Garoppolo has done, he still leaves a lot to be desired when it comes to the biggest moments. And listening to what George Kittle had to say, their number one weapon on the offensive side of the ball, talking about Trey Lance taking risks and trying to fit the ball into small windows. That offense needs that in order to become more explosive to get to where they want to go. They know that Shanahan will dial up the X's and O's, but they need a quarterback from a physical talent standpoint and from a risk-taking standpoint in order to get this team back to competing for championships.
Okay, and I get that you say that that's more of a Trey Lance type, but Booger, I come to you. What then does it take, do you think, for Kyle Shanahan to say, okay, I'm going to push the button, Trey Lance is going to start?
Well, I think early on, Jimmy's either going to have to get hurt or Trey Lance is going to have to show you that he is clear-cut the best quarterback. Other than that, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to start week one and probably for the foreseeable future because let's not forget, guys, I get it. It's easy to look at and what have you done for me lately? But Jimmy Garoppolo is a quarterback that has taken a team to a Super Bowl. He's played at a high level, and if it were not for the injury history, I don't think they would have drafted Trey Lance. The reason they wanted a quarterback is because they couldn't depend on Jimmy Garoppolo to stay healthy. Had he been healthy throughout his career in San Francisco, I don't think they would have moved on because Jimmy is still a very young quarterback. I know he's been in the league a long time, but go back and look at the number of starts that Jimmy Garoppolo has made. I want to say it's probably around 40, 45, somewhere in there. Don't quote me on that. But he hadn't played a ton of football. So he's still just scratching the surface of what I think he can be. His biggest issue, he hasn't been able to stay healthy.
Yeah, and staying on the field is key. Just want to come to you for one quick thing, Booger. Just answer me this. If he is healthy and the team is not winning, do you pull him for Trey Lance?
Yeah, I think that's a situation where you probably have to put Trey Lance in if Trey Lance is ready to go. I think the only time you put Trey Lance in is if Trey Lance is your only healthy quarterback, number one, and number two, he's playing at a high level. Because once you put him in, you do not want to have to do what they did in Miami, which is put him in, take him out, put him in, take him out. I think Kyle Shanahan is not going to put Trey Lance in until he is 100%, he either has to or he's ready.
Okay, now speaking of rookie quarterbacks, let's go over to the Jaguars. Of course, they used their number one overall pick in the draft to draft that man right there, Trevor Lawrence, who some consider a generational prospect at the position. So on Wednesday, Jags pass game coordinator Brian Schottenheimer said something that made us say, I'm sorry, what?
We certainly haven't named a starter, Gary. Our objective from day one was to build the best quarterback room that we could. We're not in a position where we're saying, hey, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're letting them all roll. Everybody's getting reps. We want this thing to be really competitive. Ultimately, when we name a starter, we'll name a starter, and Urban will do that when he's ready. And it's still too early to say, hey, how this thing's going to play out.
I mean, what? We were just talking about transparency. Booger, what do you think about that? What's your reaction to what was said right there?
That was the perfect thing for the passing game coordinator to say because he has zero authority. Like, we all know who's going to be the quarterback, but the passing game coordinator is not the guy that's in charge. The passing game coordinator is not the CEO. All you are is the passing game coordinator. Don't you step to the podium and make any proclamations. You just talk about what you do, which is the passing